Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by CrowCast, of course. With me this evening, it's a bit of a cultured show this evening. We've got rid of the riff-raff, and it's just the voices of reason. Joining me initially is Peter. How are you going, Peter?
Good, Fiend. How are you? Sadly, Donkey, we hear, might have got a territory cracker caught somewhere that wasn't very pleasant for him, so we're not hearing from the Donk tonight.
Was that a territory clacker or cracker?
Territory cracker.
Yeah.
Up the clacker.
Whatever you like, really, Macca. And speaking of Macca, how are you going, mate?
In fine form, mate. In fine form.
Very good. Very good. Not a huge amount going on. We've just been discussing, but let's crack straight into some news, shall we? See if you can flog a dead horse out of this somewhere. Just extract something out of this.
It's been remarkably quiet over the last few days. The AFL has not been putting its foot in a whole lot of things, and the tribunal has been fairly quiet. So those two great sources of news, even Kane Corns has been fairly quiet, unless something's happened in the last hour or so. But it's been relatively quiet. I think probably the thing that I've seen stir social media up the most in the last couple of days was Chris Scott's performance on AFL 360 last night, and that was his little spray at the AFL for still being the VFL, and not being happy the fact that the grand final is continually played at the MCG, which is, I mean, it's an old chestnut and it's flogging a dead horse, but I dare say, no doubt, from the point of view of trying to set up a situation whereby Geelong will be able to play its finals at the at Cardinia Park, which is reasonable, but certainly just making it a general argument in relation to the MCG. So that certainly kicked off a lot of debate today.
Yeah, Longmire sort of agreed with him, but I don't think it's very easy to say that sort of stuff once the horse is bolted, isn't it? You know, I mean, this is something that was decided.
40-year deal signed.
We can whinge for the next 40 years. I won't be around by the time they redo this one.
No, that's right. And look, there is just so much to unpack. You know, when you look at the MCC members and the AFL members, and it's just or the corporate situation. I mean, there's just a massive amount of stuff to unpack, and they'd have to start talking about it 20 years out to even for it even to be considered, I imagine.
One comment you made there, Pete, which I think is quite relevant, though, if you are going to have it at the MCG, and as we all know, getting tickets to the final are very, very difficult, and yet you've got this massive amount that go to MCG members, which I think is farcical, because for a grand final that should not be the case, and there should be bigger allocations to each of the teams that make it into the grand final.
Well, it's comical, Macca, when you think about it, that the argument that always continually comes is the fact that, well, we've got to have it at the MCG because it can fit 100,000 people. It fits the most people. You know, if you don't have it at the MCG, we're going to be denying 40,000 people a seat at the game. Well, that's the biggest BS argument going around, because of it would be the most, if not it would be amongst the top few most exclusive sporting events in the world.
Yeah,
in terms of getting a ticket.
Yep.
Because you've got whatever percentage are already wiped out by MCC members as someone said to me the other day, actually, he said even that doesn't guarantee you getting in. But MCC members, AFL members, and then all of your corporate and your hospitality. I mean, really, how many fans actually go to the game?
Yeah,
Well,
not
it's
too
always
many.
been prelim week, hasn't it? That's been the one that has been the fans' final, if you know what I mean. It's that's been the one where you can tend to get a ticket more so than the grand final.
Yep. So anyway, that was that caused a little bit of a stir. The other thing that did cause a little bit of a stir was Johnny Longmire's Freudian slip when he was asked about his commitment to the Sydney Swans, and he said he had a contract to Sydney.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit of a funny one. So the coaching machinations, that'll be a merry-go-round for the next few weeks, no doubt. But certainly the what do they call them? Oh, I've lost the word. The fill-in coaches, should I say? The fill-in coaches, the ones that are there. Ray Shaw,
caretakers.
Reece Shaw, caretakers. That's what I was looking for. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Reece Shaw and David Teague. Those two certainly didn't do their chances any harm on the weekend, both getting terrific results.
It's very rare, though, that the caretaker gets the position, even if the team does relatively well. The last one I can remember in that situation is Paul Roos.
Oh, yeah, when they arced up, when they were going to give Terry Wallace the gig.
That was only after a public uprising.
Yes, it was. So almost a rebellion from the supporters. But even if they do relatively well, in general, the caretaker doesn't get the job, I suppose, on the theory that they weren't regarded as good enough to be the coach in the first place, and they were serving somebody else. But, it's an interesting point that you'd have to do something really, really outstanding, I think, to get the job. I don't think either of them will get the job.
Well, did anyone see...
Sorry,
go. You go, mate.
No, I was just going to say it's interesting because in both cases they're first-time assistants at their club. So you probably argue, Mac, that doesn't what you were just saying doesn't actually apply in this instance because Teague's only been at Carlton for a year and Reece Shaw's only been at North for 1 or 2 seasons, I think. So I reckon Reece Shaw is a bit of a smoky, to be honest.
Well, I think, their performances by both are good. I mean, Carlton in particular, they've won 2 out of 3 games, I think it is, under Teague, isn't it? Is it 2 out of 3? And
too many.
I'll get on that later on in the night. Very disappointing that. But by the same token, I mean, Teague, we know Teague is a good coach. He was a very good forward coach. Our forward line, it really rang bells when he was here. I think Teague one day will be a senior coach somewhere, whether it's going to be here with Carlton or not. I think he's a very talented man. Reece Shaw obviously has a good relationship with players. I wouldn't want him as a public orator, but that's not, I suppose, the real job of the coach. The coach's job is to get them to win, and he's got them playing very, very good football at the moment.
Did anyone see the Carlton Freo game on the weekend? How does it happen that Fremantle were 5 goals to zip up at home against the bottom team without Cripps, without Curnow?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Well, that's one of my...
I didn't see the game.
Max tonight.
Just astonishing.
We were sort of watching the live scores update as we're, starting off the wrap on Sunday, and it was just ridiculous. So it's just, how did they conspire to lose that game? It's just, I'm surprised they haven't been blowtorched a bit more heavily in the press. Maybe they have in WA, but god damn, talk about losing the unlosable. That's worse than bloody John Hewson, I think.
That was an absolute stinker.
Now you see that we're wearing our Indigenous Guernsey again this round.
Oh, are we? I thought that was been and gone.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask that particular question because I've noticed other clubs seem to be at random pulling out their Indigenous Guernsey. I don't know whether there's something behind all that theme or what's the score.
Well, it's National NAIDOC Week. I don't know what NAIDOC stands for. It's an acronym, but It runs from July the 7th to the 14th, celebrating the history, culture and achievements of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So in honour of that week, we'll be wearing our Indigenous Guernsey. Port were offered the opportunity to wear theirs as well, but they were denied because of a clash. So the AFL denied the Power wearing their Indigenous Guernsey, but we'll be wearing ours as the home team.
I know we ought to come up with an Indigenous Guernsey one day that's got prison bars on it, just to knock Port Adelaide.
That'd be funny, wouldn't it? Oh, well, that's interesting you should say that, Macca, because there's nothing stopping anyone from coming up with a prison bar design, and maybe Collingwood as their clash need to come up with a prison bar Guernsey. Wouldn't that be
excellent?
Wouldn't that be classic?
Thanks to Sloane Ranger, their National Aborigines and Islanders Day Observance Committee.
There we are.
That's there we go.
And
Thank you for that.
Sadly, they're more intelligent in the chat than we are.
Yeah, that's been the case for a long, long time. You know that, Mac.
I know.
Oh, dear. How are we on the injury front?
Well, we should be getting a couple back this week. Litch is a maybe, with probably slightly above 50%. Miller, I think, is a yes. And who was the other one that was out?
CY.
CY, yeah.
Oh, and CY, they said he will be back.
Yeah, I thought I saw that all three are
Yes.
a pretty strong chance to be back, and they're even talking about a wild, chance that JJ might be back as well. So
Yeah, apparently he's training now, and participating in pretty much everything. So, I mean, that's amazing considering what it looked like at the time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Let me just throw a curly one at you, just on the assumption that JJ won't be back, which is probably the most likely situation. In our structure for coming up this week, I have no doubt that Port Adelaide are going to be bringing back probably Ryder as well. I mean, they dropped much better players than they played against Bulldogs. I'll be talking about that later too. Unintelligent crew they are. But they're probably going to bring back in Ryder, and that'll give them two very good ruckmen. And do we leave Riley O'Brien to bash it away on his own, or do we bring in Jacobs and put him at full forward? Now, I know he's not a particularly mobile player. You'd have to surround him by smaller players to get crumbs, etc. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, Pete, do you see what I have to deal with every Sunday night? Because Macca continually jumps one segment ahead. So we're
I was just thinking about that.
Sorry.
I was just thinking as he was rolling that all out. I was just thinking to myself, have we exited news?
No, I was just thinking aloud. Sorry.
Yeah. No, every freaking week, I'm doing the team stats, and Macca starts talking about individuals. Like, dude, just put the brakes on, pump the brakes. And secondly, Macca, don't steal my idea from 2 weeks ago. Okay, just get your own material.
Steal it from somewhere, mate.
Just get your own material.
Not that there's been a hell of a lot of news, although I will just throw in there that, and this is a gratuitous plug of my own kid who, in an under-10s game on the weekend, kicked 7 goals in 3 12-minute quarters.
Hello.
He was, he was just absolutely just ripped him a new one. So anyway, I just throw that in there as a gratuitous plug.
No, well done by the lad.
We could use him up forward at the moment.
You paid him $10 a goal, are you, Pete?
Oh, no,
he will be now.
If we did that, mate, we would have been broke over the course of the last few years.
Little Peter J's going, oh God, there's an idea.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
anyway, I reckon that's about it.
Yeah, considering Macca's dragged us there, we may as well go there,
Let's do it.
Because God knows he'll just keep spilling it out. So Macca and I have obviously talked about it, and Pete, I know exactly what you're going to say. about the Geelong game, so just go ahead and say it, and that'll be 30 seconds gone.
It'll be 30 seconds. Didn't care. I was at my local football club on Friday night having a parent night and had half an eye on it, but was more more interested in having a few beers and talking about the kids' footy. And no, I just, to me, West Coast lost by 58 points down there this year when nobody's writing them off. So it's a Bermuda Triangle of football. I just look at that fixture, that game in the fixture at the start of the year, and I just put a cross through it. And it just doesn't matter. 2016, the Bulldogs lost down there. 2017, the Tigers lost down there. It does not matter. We just put a line through it and we move on to next week.
I don't reckon it is that simple, though, Pete. And because while you're right in principle in everything that you just said, we discussed it on Sunday night. There were quite a few things that the players themselves got wrong and that the coaching staff got wrong, which could have been critical in making the difference between winning and losing.
Did you watch West Coast play down there, Macca?
Oh, they did, but they didn't turn up that day.
Oh, the only reason I'll tell you now, the only reason I watched it is because they were the last leg of an 8-leg multi I had, and it was it was just a line bet. They only had to get within 24 points or something or other. And they got absolutely smashed. You would have thought that West Coast were a bottom 4 team that day, absolute bottom 4 team, and yet here they are now. Do you reckon they're a chance?
Well, sorry, who's a chance?
West Coast. You reckon they're a chance at the?
Oh, you mean for the flag?
Yeah.
For flag. No, I don't.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right. I think there you go. You've just completely
there goes that.
There goes that argument. Well, I reckon they're a chance.
Of course, they're a chance. Come on.
And they got smashed down there. Why would you be worried about what goes on down at Kardinia Park? It's been going on for years.
Well, the only issue that I've got, Pete, about it is that was how easily under pressure we went back to the schmozzle that was the first 4 to 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah,
I was disappointed. I mean, it's one thing to expect to lose because it's Geelong and the Cattery, but I was really disappointed after having the ascendancy for a while, how quickly when we were put under pressure, we reverted straight back to some very bad habits. And we talked a little bit about it on Sunday night, but it was the stat line of uncontested possessions was quite telling, and the fact that we just weren't willing to try and play the style of game that we've been playing so successfully over the last 4 to 6 weeks.
Absolutely spot on.
Yeah,
absolutely spot on. I could not have encapsulated that better, Fiend. You absolutely spot on. We went out there and we had a quarter. We had about a quarter and a bit of fun playing 2017 football. And at no point did we look like we were interested in actually switching it and battening it down like we had been for the last few weeks.
We got murdered in fact, Geelong played our game. We got murdered in uncontested possession. We got murdered in the mark stat. All the key indicators that show that we're controlling the pace and the flow of the game, which we've been so good at, and we didn't even try. We did not even try to play that style of game, and I think some of it is down to CY being out. I think that was integral because it forced Matt and Brad to play a little bit more inside, and both of them, as a consequence, weren't available for that second give out of the contest, and we just, as Pikey said in his press conference, bees to a honeypot. So we never really had clear possession, but when we did have clear possession, there was no intent to share the ball around, shift up the ground, get that territory gain that Pikey talks about so often, and allow ourselves some repeat inside 50s. It was just bounce it in, bounce it out, bounce it in, bounce it out. And meanwhile, Geelong were playing that keeping soft footy when they had it. Yeah.
And Dwayne Magic, I think Dwayne Magic, somebody in the chat raised the fact that about Sloane Ranger, Kelly not being tagged. I mean, and as Fiend quite correctly said, the absence of CY was critical because it meant that the boys that have been hanging on the outside a bit and therefore protecting the outside as well they were going inside, and we were like bees to a honey pot. And just Kelly just sitting on the outside, nobody tagging him, nobody doing anything to do about it. And, he just ran riot. Whereas it's been shown that if you tag him, you can cut him down to very modest levels.
There's three things that I look at, and we would never ever, no one would ever say that you go into an AFL game not wanting to win, and I certainly wouldn't suggest that. But there were three things to my mind that were just very, very bizarre, and we've touched on all three tonight. One of those, of course, is the fact that we seem to refuse to play the game plan that we'd played in the last few weeks we talked about. We allowed Kelly to run riot. That was number two. How that happens, I'll just never, ever know. And the third one, which, for me is sort of interesting, is the fact that, there were, three key players that were, sort of given the extra week just to get themselves right. Now, I wonder if that had been a final, whether those three players would have played. But you can get set that those three players, they'll be cherry ripe this week to play in the Showdown. Don't worry about that. Now, I'm not going to go as far to suggest that we didn't try and win that game, because I just don't think that happens in AFL football. But to me, they were just three very, very bizarre things.
Yeah, the selections I found interesting. I was really happy that Benny Davis got a gig, but I didn't think it was the right game for him. I would have preferred
definitely the wrong game.
You're right, Pete. Miller has been struggling, so that was probably one that was likely. The CEY one I found interesting because given that he's bounced back after a weekend, we haven't really got much information about how it happened or how severe it was.
Supposed to be able to kick in the shins out of training.
Yeah, that's that sort of stuff you'd normally play through in an important game.
I would have thought.
So I think his non-selection was probably indicative of what you're talking about, Peter, that perhaps there was just a little bit of, well, why risk him in a game we're 85% likely to lose? And I don't like that attitude.
Well, I'm not going to go as far to say that's what it was, but it just seems to me that there are just some funny indicators. Well, yeah, how on earth do we completely, that style of play where we slow movement, march it up the field, Sydney Swan style, keeping it, how does that suddenly just go out the window?
Yeah, terrible.
They didn't even try.
No, they didn't. Not at any stage. Even like tracking that uncontested was posse. We were in negative territory for the whole game, but the only two times we were almost even in terms of the differential was in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the first quarter and then halfway through the second. But at no stage did we actually lead that particular stat. And I said to Cam on Thursday night at the Rev Up that we had to win that stat by heaps if we had any chance of winning, because that's almost a key. That and contested possession is almost a key indicator. And the interesting thing was that we were reasonably even in contested possession. I think we won clearances, and yet we got slaughtered outside, and that was the tail of the tape, really.
Yeah, you were quite right. It wasn't a question of effort. It was a question of being smart and being the game, the way we played the game style, the way we used the ball, what we did and didn't do with the ball. We had the old traditional. It ended up with the old traditional situation where Geelong sit back and we charge in there and kick it long to where it's only Geelong, and we did that so many times. And I thought, this is bloody history repeating.
Of course it is. It happens every year. And look, honestly, guys, how could you possibly, look each other in the eye and say, yeah, we honestly sat down and watched Port Adelaide play Geelong last week. We watched a tape of that play, that game, and we didn't take out of it that when Tim Kelly had a hard tag from Port Adelaide and was completely cut out of the game, that didn't go a long way towards winning that game.
Yeah.
And then not repeat it.
100%. I thought
it makes no sense whatsoever.
I thought for certain we would do that, and Gibbs would probably be the man that would be parked on him.
Well, we talked about it last week, didn't we, Finn? There was a guy that messaged him from Facebook and said, and we thought, yeah, that's a great idea. Why wouldn't you do that?
Yep.
Play Gibbs and tag him.
Yep. And as it turns out, why else play Gibbs? Because he did 2/5 of bugger all night. Him and Richie Douglas. I don't know what you felt like, Pete, but to me they were just liabilities. And in terms of Douglas, I think he's done, and I think with Gibbs, I think he's done until he gets his head right.
Just average. And I want a special shout out too for a couple of fan favourites who really need the blowtorch on them this week, and that's one's Rory Laird, and his act, his
stinker
in the first quarter when he just allowed Myers to kick that goal.
Yeah, when he just ran past the ball, basically.
It was disgraceful. It was, if you're gonna hold Rory Atkins into the same standards as we hold Rory Atkins to, he should be dropped this week, Lairdy, because, and you know what? And do you know what told me how bad that was? It was the way that all the Geelong players were getting stuck into him.
Oh God, yeah, yep. He didn't straight line the ball. He did not straight line the ball.
No.
And I tell you what, when your peers see that happen, they'll let you know about it, and they did. And if I was a Geelong player at that point, I would have thought, well, that game's won.
Yeah.
And the other one and Brodie Smith was the other one. Also in the first quarter was the one that allowed Ablett in to kick his goal. It was the first goal. Two disgraceful, soft, gutless efforts.
I thought they both
players that should know better, and
they run games.
They both need to have a good hard look at themselves, as far as I'm concerned.
Just to add to what you just said then, Pete, too, is there was one down the other end, and that was Gibbsy when just before the break, and there was a lead by the Geelong player, I think it was a full forward, and Hawkins, and Gibbs was there, and all he had to do was just dive in front and he could have punched the ball away, and he just shat himself and did nothing, and then obviously there must have been comments coming flying from other players because he was looking around, raising his hands up in the air as to say, what could I do? Well, it was a disgraceful piece of pikey, and I think he deserves to be dropped for that alone because it was just blatant.
And I through the week I then read criticism of players like Himmelberg and Davis and these kids that are out there that have played half a dozen games. And you've got 200 game, all Australians, 200 game players going out and perform, behaving like that on a football field.
Yep.
Just appalling.
And, Geelong are a very, very experienced side. And with those young lads, at times it looked like men versus boys. I mean, Benny Davis was thrown around a fair bit and could never really get any clear air. And Taylor was all over Himmelberg all night.
I hate to say how many times he got tackled, poor old Davis.
It looked like they were targeting him a bit, which wouldn't surprise me, as a first game player. I'm sure they targeted him for a bit of, roughhouse treatment, which is fair, it's fair enough. That's the way it goes.
But that's when blokes like Richard Douglas and Bryce Gibbs need to stand up, and Rory Laird and Brodie Smith and those blokes. It's not up to Himmelberg and Davis. I mean, those blokes needed to hit the scoreboard in order for us to win, but they needed the senior blokes around them. Eddie Betts, I thought, also was particularly disappointing. Just not getting involved enough, and it's all right to be an opportunist small forward, but he's also a senior player in that forward group, and I didn't see him hitting up too hard. I didn't see him doing more than his little seagull stuff, and I just felt like it was a disappointing game for him. He could have made more of a presence. I felt our forward 50 pressure was negligible.
And the other thing, Taylor Walker started off pretty well, I thought, and then he did a little bit of I think it was a hyperextension of the arm or the elbow or something like that, and
it was unfortunate.
Yeah, and that restricted his game. But he looked like he was going to be in for a good one before that.
Look, all I can say about this game is it looked to me like 20 other Adelaide Crows versus Geelong.
It did. That's the sad part of it.
If you got out the replay of a whole lot of other games we've had down there, it would look pretty much the same. The scores would be pretty much the same.
And I guess, which brings us all the way back to the original point, Pete, in that our finals of recent years have also been symptomatic of going to water under pressure. And
Yep.
I think that's where I differentiate between, your West Coast losing down there and all the rest of it, because the West Coast can play under that pressure. But we really haven't shown yet this season that we can win a game in adversity, barring maybe the Lions game, I guess. So, the GWS win was a good one, but it was home.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back to a matter of trust with this team. And unfortunately...
You're doing a Kenny Higley, are you?
Don't accuse me of that. You'll get banned from the cast. Unfortunately, I got a bit ahead of myself in terms of my my thoughts on the Crows, but I'm back to the looking good but can't trust them category.
Yeah, I think I have to go along with that.
Oh, I'm going to give them another week because I've seen, as I've said for a few weeks running now, I've seen enough that I have got reasonable trust in them. I think certainly more so than I have had over the last few seasons. And I know that we've always aligned in that thought, Fiend and Macca, but I've seen enough this year that I do have a level of trust in them. But I also, for whatever reason, I'm one of those people that I think we're all in one or two camps. There's people that are happy just to write the Geelong away game off, and there's those that look at it a bit more intricately. And not one of those is right or wrong, but I'm just in that camp that I think that you just write that Geelong game off, and I expect a really, really strong response on Saturday.
Well, I agree with that, Pete, and history showed that to be correct. I think not necessarily us, but the people that run the show, they should be really looking at that so closely and calling that like a final to work out ways to compensate or to correct the things we didn't do correct.
The terrifying thing, of course, will be if they're first and we do happen to snag fourth and we've got to play a final down there. Then I will be terrified.
yeah, I'd just about write that off. Well, look, we've probably spent more than the obligatory 30 seconds on that game, so why don't we look at the big weekend showdown against the old rivals? Because in the context of the season now, particularly if we're any chance at all at jagging a top four spot, Pete, this is a game that has to be won.
Oh, absolutely no question, Fiend. For me on the run home, what have we got? We've got 8 games left. I've got us down for 5 that are pretty winnable, and then we come down to really what it's going to come down to is 3 games, and that's this one this week, West Coast away and Collingwood at home.
Correct.
So we're going to have to win 2 out of those 3. So the ones for me to target, obviously, are this game coming up this week and Collingwood at home are the 2 games that I think we target. And I think that if we can get away with, if we can get 7 of those 8 and win and end up with 15 wins, I think we've got a reasonable chance at top 4 because we have, we've had a pretty tricky run so far, and we do have a good run of games coming up where we would be favoured to win. So that's this week obviously becomes absolutely critical, and I'm very, very confident that we'll beat Port Adelaide on the weekend. I think that I'm prepared to just forget that the last weekend ever happened, and I feel very, very confident that we'll go back to the way that we've been playing. I think we'll get those 3 players back, and Veen, I know that you and I never ever thought we'd be sitting here saying this, but I cannot believe how important Cam Ellis-Yeoman is to our structure and our setup, and for those reasons you identified, which is the fact that he does, he bangs around inside and he frees up a bit of outside run for us, and so his re-inclusion will be absolutely critical for us, I believe.
Vital. Vital. I'm looking for young Bradley to recompose himself, and I hope he's chucked all his jocks in the wash during the week, because I don't know about you, Pete, but I felt like he just spent 120 minutes at Cardinia Park shitting himself. He looked so panicked and lacked any sort of composure. And Port can be a little frenetic in terms of their frontal pressure. And I'd like to see Brad, just go back to the form of the previous few weeks because he was a shadow of himself last week. And I think...
I just think, though, saying, while you're correct, and we agreed on that on Sunday night, I think that's because he was playing a different role than he has been playing, and that normally he's been, CY's been doing the hard...
Macca, yes? I saw Brad get the ball in the middle of the ground about 5 to 10 metres clear of anyone and shit himself because he was there was implied pressure. He thought he was going to be under the pump, and then it wasn't until he realised he had a few metres that he stopped himself from kicking the ball hurriedly and actually tried to do something with it. I
genuinely don't think he ever shits himself. He might panic in terms of...
Well, that's what I'm talking... I'm not talking about fear. I'm talking about panic.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were implying fear.
No. I'm talking panic. He panics with the ball. And he was panicked all night against Geelong. And even in his good run of games over the previous month, there's still been plenty of examples of panic disposal. First gives to flat-footed teammates or to blokes under the pump or whatever. So Brad needs to be more composed and go back to using the ball aggressively. And hopefully we'll see why back, Pete. We'll see a bit more of Matt Crouch on the outside because I actually thought that Matt was developing into a nice little distributor.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, he had a horror moment at a critical time in the second against Geelong where the Rat had given an absolute peach of a 40-metre pass to open up the middle, and Matt was running into the forward 50. He could have given it anywhere. Yeah, and he scrubbed the little toe poke 20-metre kick that went straight back over his head for a goal. But anyway, onto this game. Yeah, I mean, obviously Miller is critical. Lynch. These are really, really important players that we were without last week, and also there may be a rough chance that JJ plays as well.
Well,
excuse me.
You're quite right there, Pete, because with Miller, if Miller plays and he loosens up the back lines in the sense that Laird and Smith, because of his ability to get the ball and to use it so well, that brings them more into the game, and he's also got to be watched a lot closer, which means less attention to the other players as well. I think that he actually put some class back into the back line and for the way the ball's moved from the back lines. And Lynch, of course, as we know, unfortunately, Davis tried to play that role, and that, too much for a kid in that against Geelong down there, and that just didn't happen. That link, the nearest we got to was Seeds playing some very, very good dashes down the ground. I thought Seeds had a very good one, but Lynch is very, very important, and you don't really get to appreciate how much he's done until you see the stats afterwards, because you just don't know him quite as much as you should, even though he's working his backside off, covering about 15, 16 Ks during the game or more, and he is a very, very important link player for us.
So, Pete, I know that he's your boy, but do we persist with Ben if Tommy Lynch doesn't get up?
No.
Or do we go for Darcy or another option up forward?
I think if Lynch doesn't get up, I think that they'll persevere with him. But I think that if Lynch does get up, then it'll be straight in and out.
Oh yeah. So you reckon he stays in?
I might have misunderstood your question.
Yeah,
so I think
he stays in if Tommy's. Go. Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, I think that they'll give him another go if he's not fit. So, yeah. No, I wouldn't imagine that they'll drop Davis and then come up with, say, Fogarty. I can't see that happening.
Mm. What about Douglas?
Oh my God! Surely it's time.
Well, you'd have to think so.
But he's still there.
You'd have to think so. And I think the other one that's in the frame is Lockie Murphy out of that forward line. Spends a lot of time looking particularly busy, doing not much at all in terms of output. And, we love his endeavour and all the rest of it, but he's not hitting the scoreboard, and his defensive pressure has dropped off, I believe, over the last few weeks. And I just wonder whether it's time for either a Stengel or maybe another crack at Chase Jones for some defensive pressure up forward.
Yeah, I think that Chase will be close this week.
Chase had a very good game in Staffel on the weekend, so it's probably, if he is going to be brought back, this would be a good game to bring him back in. But
And
I don't think that, but I don't think they will drop Douglas.
they can't not drop him. He's like Douglas is the lowest averaging player of anyone to play the amount of games that he has, and he's struggling to hit his averages at the moment in terms of output. They just can't play him. He's a liability. Peter, I really liked what you said about Rory Laird, and I wonder whether you would send a message, Rory Atkins style, Josh Jenkins style, and give Lairdy a spell in such a big game.
I don't think they. I'd absolutely love to see him make a statement about what happened on the weekend with him. Excuse me, but I don't think they will in such a big game. I think that they'll let him ride for another week or two yet. But I was bitterly disappointed in him on the weekend, and Smith as well. But I don't think that they'll I mean, we're getting then into 3, 4, 5 changes which they just don't like to do. I mean, if Miller comes back, and CY comes back, that's 2. We're hopeful Lynch comes back, that's 3. I can't see them making any more than 3, 4 changes at the absolute most.
So Gibbs maybe stays in, do you think?
Gibbs, yeah. So
no, Gibbs will come out for CY, I guess.
Gibbs would come out for CY.
Yeah.
Maybe Douglas for Miller. And if Lynch is fit, then Davis for Lynch. They would be the 3, I would think. Yeah. If they come up. Yep,
Douglas for Miller is probably the one, isn't it?
I think so. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. I think I'm with you, Pete. On paper, I think we should pump Port Adelaide. They were woeful against the Bulldogs, albeit in pretty horrid conditions. And the question's got to be asked: if Port Adelaide lose in the wet, but there's no one there to see it, did they actually lose?
Well, not in their minds, of course not. But look, I thought I actually picked Bulldogs to beat Port Adelaide on the weekend because the arrogance of Hinkley. He's got 2 players who are regulars suspended, and he drops 3 players who may not be playing right up to their best, but at their best are their very, very cream. And he's got 5 players who probably don't deserve to be in his side. And the Bulldogs had a very, very good win the week before that. Their midfield is their cream, and it is a cream midfield when you've got you've got Dunkley, you've got McRae, you've got Bontempelli, and they had both, full stop. Wines, he looked like a girl. He hardly touched the ball, 12 possessions, and nobody else. And arrogance by Hinkley. I think Hinkley's one that should really take the rap for it, and they were pathetic. They can't be that pathetic again because I will bring in the better players this week. I do think they'll put up a much better showing than that.
They'll play a fairly similar game style that we want to play. They'll want to move the ball slowly and then march it up.
Yep.
And I strongly suspect it'll be a very, very low scoring affair. I just think that when the break comes, I think we'll be a little bit better equipped to pick up that 3, 4, 5 goals.
Do you think we're potent enough up forward, Pete, to be able to take advantage of maybe an advantage in disposal?
Yeah, I still think that we are, even though it's a massive loss to have. I'm working on Lynch playing, but if he doesn't, then it's a massive loss to have both Lynch and Jenkins out. It really is.
It is.
It's a big hole. It's a big hole. But I still think there's enough there. I think Tex is coming back into some form. He looked really, really on Friday night, other than the injury. He looked like the Tex of old. And, Eddie will bounce back as well. So I think that, 10, 12 goals will win it.
Yeah.
And you just need, 2 or 3 from those kind of players. And then the midfielders will chip in, Roy Sloane, good for a couple, that kind of...
Yeah.
That kind of deal.
Well,
it won't be a great night for forwards.
No, J-Mac makes a good point too. CY coming in, we'll see a bit more of Greenwood up forward. Yeah, the bloke down back that I'm worried about is Talia. He's had a couple of... He's had a strange season because...
Very strange season.
Some of his games have been superb, and yet he's been towed up by the big players, Hawkins, Josh Kennedy, and they're not going to get any smaller this week. So I worry a bit about Tales, and I just wonder whether Port might actually try to isolate Daniel Talia a bit, because he seems to be found wanting lately when he hasn't got the support of Keith, third man up. And a lot of teams are starting to make Keith more accountable to take away that weapon.
He's had a very strange year.
Yeah, and he was very, very ordinary. That as Vane said in those two particular games, he just got out. As I said in the chat, he got monstered. I thought maybe Hardigan might have been a better move on after the first few minutes, but you could see Tardy was trailing him all the time.
It just didn't look like it, did he? Sam in the Facebook chat wonders whether we need to put Keith on Dixon. I don't think that's a terrible idea, but I'd probably go with Hardigan. But I think the danger starts coming when Port try and mismatch us up forward and go really tall with Lysett and Ryder and all those blokes up there as well. And Geelong, I felt, really isolated us quite well in defence and seemed to be able to work mismatches somehow. I don't know. And I think I doubt whether Hinkley would have seen that because he probably wasn't watching, but I'm sure Bass or someone like that down there at Port Adelaide with half a brain was watching it, and they might try a similar tactic.
Now, I'm not suggesting this should happen, but when I interrupted about 3 segments ago, what do you think of the possibility or the potential or the wisdom of playing two ruck with Jacobs resting it full forward for a big body up there, and also some relief for the ruck, because if they play two ruckmen, I think then O'Brien's in for a bit of a tough night.
Well, I think we talked about this the other week, Macca, and I think you'd get some support from both Fiend and I on that as as something just to kick around as a discussion point as to are we better going with Himmelberg or do you play Source? Do you think that they'll recall Ryder and maybe we go with two ruckmen? Fiend, and we did talk about this, and I know that neither of us were really opposed to it.
No, well, I was quite in favour of it because against Geelong, because I just felt like it might give us a different look that Geelong might not be equipped for. And as it turns out, I reckon we could have probably done with a bit of Sauce up forward. We saw Riley go up forward and take a clunk. Look, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. In fact, there's a case for, depending on the weather and whatnot, there's a case for going tall and doing a Douglas for Jacobs swap and just rotating 3 talls with 2 up forward along with Tex. I don't think they'd do it though. But it wouldn't bother me if they did.
So, and the way that I'd frame that is that I'd just return Sauce to the first ruck role. And I'd actually shift O'Brien into the Jenkins role. Yeah. That's how I'd do it. Because I think that O'Brien, he not only can he clunk a mark, which we've seen, but the main thing is for him is he's athletic on the ground. And if
he hunts,
if you're trying to keep a normal sort of a forward structure where you're attacking and trying to keep the ball in, and you're attacking the player and all of those kind of things, then O'Brien will do that for you. And he's got a bit of pace and a bit of fitness,
Yeah.
So I would have him playing the 30% role and Sauce the 70% role.
Yeah.
When you put it that way, I'm starting to rather like it because I just think that it just gives us more kick around there. I mean, and I'm not having a go at Himmelberg because I think he is a definite player of the future, but he's a developing player.
Yes, spot on.
And what we're seeing now is probably 50% or 60% of what he's going to be. Whereas with Jacobs and O'Brien, particularly Jacobs, you'd be putting in a player that has got some form back now in the snaffle, and he's got some fitness back in the snaffle, and he's a wise old head as well. So I just think it's got a lot of merit.
Yeah, I just don't think you can play him in the forward role. not much anyway.
No, the way you structured it is a lot better than how I originally put it.
Yeah,
one-
I mean, well, look, sorry, just to finish that one off,
Yep.
we only have to look at how Geelong set up and played 2 rucks against O'Brien last week to see how valuable it was, notwithstanding the fact that Blitzards is probably a tall mid anyway, but they really worked O'Brien over last week, and he, by his own admission, was pretty sore by the end of it. And it'll be interesting to see actually how well he does come up for this game, given how hard he had to play last week, and that might actually factor into selection as well.
I was going to ask a question, a little bit of a left field question, but is anybody, now that we find ourselves in this situation where Lynch in doubt, Jenkins probably not playing, and as you're saying, Fane, we look a little bit thin up forward. Is anybody, feeling a little bit annoyed that we had, for whatever reason, Fogarty playing for half a season in defence?
I've been angry at it all year.
And yet here we are, which you would think really would be the precise sort of time you're thinking, right, who's our key forward that we've got in the twos ready to go? And I just don't know what's happened with him this year.
No, he played. I don't know how many games he played, about 10 games roughly last year, and in his first year, and his second year, not even a hint of a game, and played out of position. And Nikki, who watches a lot of the snaffle, when I spoke to her about it, she said that why he was playing in defence was to allow Himmelberg and one of the guys on the rookie list to play up forward. So we take number 12 draft pick and throw him down back to accommodate a rookie. And I thought to myself, if this is true, what Nicky's saying, it's stupidity. And I don't think we've handled him very well this year. And I think that's reflected by his performances. I don't think he's overly happy with how he's been treated.
No. Matt in the chat says, problem is he can't ruck. No, that's true. But I guess, all things, as much as I enjoyed Benny Davis getting a debut, I can't believe that, Fogarty wasn't ready to go for that third spot, the Lynch spot.
Yeah, because he would have been the correct selection, all things being equal, because he provided just a little bit more strength in the contest and, against those matured Geelong defenders. So I'm with you, Pete. I don't quite understand how they're managing Fogarty. I reckon they've messed with the kid a little bit in terms of his confidence, because by all reports he's not actually playing that well at the moment now. And, as you rightly point out, Mac, number one, or first round draft pick, and it'll be his. I don't think he'll get a look in this season. I just can't see him working into enough form and there being a spot available. So whether they were trying to work him into the team and thought that there might be a hole defensively that he could slot into, I don't know, Peter. But to me, he's just a cut and dried forward, and you just play him there.
Yeah, Brent in the chat saying, look, if he could play, then be in. Well, I think the point we're trying to make, Brent, is not the fact that he's out of form. We accept that he's out of form and that he's not, shouldn't be selected. But the point we're making is that he spent half a year in defence, and really, I guess the argument is, have we played him out of form a little bit? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely so.
Certainly out of confidence, I reckon.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think it's going to be as cut and dried as we'd probably hope, because there's quite a few variables in terms of players turning up to play. We've gone through them, and I think that the Power have enough weapons that if we're off our game, then they could come up and bite us. That being said, I don't think that'll happen. I expect us to win and win quite well.
Oh, look, they're never easy games. I mean, the last showdown we were 7 goals up in the last quarter, and even that got tight.
Yeah, horribly so. Yeah. No, I think we can win the game, but I think it's important what structure we put out there and the way we play the game. If we played like we did against Geelong, I think we'd probably end up losing. If we go back to how we had been playing, then I think we should win the game. But I don't see it winning by a big margin, though. But like I think you said, Pete, there won't be a lot of goals scored.
No, it'll be low scoring for sure.
Yeah, like 12-7, 12-8, something like that, I reckon. Particularly if there's a bit of weather around.
As long as we're the 12, I'm happy with that.
Well, that's about all that we can talk about. Don't forget, obviously, on Thursday night, Friday night, Cam and I will be discussing the game in more detail in the rev up. So check out that on YouTube or Facebook, or the audio version on Spreaker. But I guess we're done, and without Donkey, we're going to have a very, very quick competitions. Now, apparently we have a Dream Team competition, Peter and Macca. But I haven't logged in for so long to pick my team that I've forgotten my password, so I won't be covering that at all.
Well done.
So let's go straight to the tipping comp, and it was a bit of a schmozzle last week. There wasn't a huge amount going on. Benny Treeman got 6, Donkey got 5, along with Matt, Paulie C, J-Mac, Bayside Crow, myself, and Moyley. So that leaves... it's a pretty interesting leaderboard. We have DSG, Mick, Spuds, and Nicky all on 82. Moyley sneaking along there on 81. Bayside Crow, myself on 79. I'm not out of it. And J-Mac 78 with Paulie C on 77, and then the rest with a little bit of work to do. Donkey, I might add down, Stone Motherless on 63.
Of course.
Yeah, so pretty tight at the top. There's only half a dozen games between the top 10 or so, so all there to play for in the tipping. So don't forget to get your tips in. Macca?
Yep.
Yes, I am just a grumpy old man. That's what I am. And I really don't care who knows it. I don't vote politics.
Give us some gold, mate.
Okay, well, look, I think the music says it all. I'm a grumpy old man tonight, and I've got no sweets to give at all. Just tell me something.
None.
Not a sweet. Not a sweet. Not happy with anything. Hate the world, etc., etc. But in the smack side, well, let me start with the Port Adelaide game. First of all, I reckon their tarps are starting to get twitchy out in the sheds.
I reckon you're getting a bit obsessed with Port Adelaide, Mac.
Well, I mean, how could you not? Before the game, they hold their bloody scarves up and will never, ever tear us apart just before they go and get torn apart. And as I said, even on the other night, I just said that there were idiots holding up blankets instead because they probably couldn't afford a bloody scarf or something, Pathetic. And Higley, he gets a huge smack because he called his players untrustworthy. He chose that bloody side. I said, as I explained previously, 2 players suspended, dropped 3 classy ones, bring in duds. He's the untrustworthy one. He picked the dud side there, then they got beat. So big smack for Ken Higley for being a bloody idiot. Massive smack to Freo. Massive smack. As you quite rightly said, Fiend, how could they possibly lose to Carlton?
That was Peter.
Well, well done, Pete. Thumbs up to Pete. I mean, he's a smart one. Look, no Cripps, and Curnow goes down. The star of the 4 line goes down. Freo, I hate you. We've probably cost us the chance of getting first draft pick.
Rubbish. Come on, Peter. Come on, Macca. Fire up.
Right now, Gibbs. I've got a great big smack for Gibbs with that great big pull out with it when he really piked it. He just did pike it. Yeah. Now, the other thing, though, what I wanted to say was big smack for the club for the whole way they've handled the Gibbs issue.
Well, what issue?
There is something going on in the background in Gibbs's life, in my opinion, from what I'm hearing.
Do you know?
I'm not saying. And it is pretty well known.
Be very careful, Macca.
I was not saying anything out of place.
Thank you.
But we do have a media department that controls what comes out, and I don't believe they are handling the Gibbs issue very well. If they came out and they said that Gibbs has got issues and we're going to play him in the Bs while he resolves those issues, then I think that would be good for the player. That would be good for the public. It would be good for everybody. But the fact we've got our own media department, I think, is our own worst enemy as well, because we get fed the bullshit they want to feed us, and we don't get fed the facts that we should probably know.
No. There's no way any media department in any AFL club in Australia would disclose anything about one of their players. It just wouldn't happen, Macca.
Anyhow, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fine. My opinion on top of that would be that at the moment it's quite an easy one because we don't have to worry about any off-field stuff. We just have to select or not select Bryce on form. On form, he's not getting a gig. So if there's other circumstances, then that's a side issue because at the moment he doesn't deserve to get picked anyway.
Well, the point I'm making is the fact is his form is being affected that undoubtedly. And we've had this situation where other clubs, where players have had depression, they've come out publicly and stated that there was a problem and the player, etc. I'm not expecting them to come out and say the reasons or anything like that, but in my opinion, they would serve themselves well and they would serve the player much better if they were to come out and say that the man has some private issues, and once they're sorted out, we expect them to come.
But how do you know that? How do you know that? Well, two things. First of all, you are making massive assumptions about certain issues, and I'm not going to pass any judgment on those assumptions. But secondly, what's there to say that Bryce is maybe asking the club not to say anything about supposed issues? Maybe the club is behaving in a manner that they've been requested to behave.
I'm just cracking up because Vardy Magic is saying, "Come out and say it, Macca." You're suggesting Gibbs stole your letterbox. No, I didn't. No, I am not saying that. Look, I'll say no more than what I've said. Other than the fact is that I'm just not happy about the whole issue. And that's my opinion, and so I'm just smacking away, and that's what I do. And the last one goes to the AFL for two reasons. Gil McLaughlin for being the feeble creature that he is at the top, and I don't know whether you saw that interview with him the other day. He was absolutely pathetic and showed every reason why he should be replaced as the chief executive of the AFL. He's got nothing. He's hollow. And also the AFL for the score review. There was a classic touch ball paid during in the one of the early games of the week. Everybody could see it except obviously the score reviewer. So the AFL they've covered themselves in shite this year. They really have. And one of the things about the score review situation, I still think there is massive merit even if the ball hits the post, if it goes through like in every other sport other than AFL footy. It should be the score, like the goal.
100%, Macca. I 100% agree with you.
Well, you piss off so many problems.
Yeah, I think the post should be in play, and if it goes through the goals, it's a goal. If it goes through the points, it's a point. And if it bounces back into the field of play, it's play on. And it would solve
and then the only
everything.
way they have to, and then the only thing they have to worry about whether it was touched up further up the ground, and in most cases there is there's footage of play from various angles, and you go either with the umpire's call if you can't make up your mind, and you do it pretty quickly. But at the moment, they're just getting so many things wrong that it's not funny. And they're talking about creating a bunker and a central bunker, etc., with more professional people, etc., to understand why you would do that. But if they change the rules so that it just went through, it would solve that problem.
The problem is they've got to take out they've got to take out the review of the touched off the boot.
Yeah,
because at the end of the day, we just get rid of it. We don't review an umpire calling touched, if it's a mark, anywhere else around the ground. So why do we remove that from the field umpire's discretion? When it's to do with the goal, because it could be just as important in not paying a mark.
Yep, agree.
Where it's touched off the boot or not touched off the boot. We don't do it anywhere else in the field of play, so we shouldn't be doing it for a goal. The only reason, I couldn't agree more with the goalposts theory that you've put up, the only thing that should be needed is whether the ball went over the line or not. That's all.
Yep.
That's all that's needed.
Correct.
100% agree.
Correct. 100%.
Matt on the chat reckons, may as well make the ball round and put a net behind the post. When you think about it, Matt, we're the only sport where the apparatus, the scoring apparatus, is not in play. Basketball hits the rim, play on. NFL hits the post, play on. Soccer, obviously, hockey, you name it. Every other sport where the ball hits the apparatus is in play and it's play on. We're the only sport where the ball is dead once it hits the apparatus, and I just think it's a rod for our own back. I reckon I put something up on our website 12 months ago about that, Macca. So I dead set agree with you, 100%.
Mm.
And secondly, Pete, I think your point about the touch thing too. We for hundreds of years, not hundreds of years, but 100 and something years, we relied on the umpire's call whether it was touched or not, and went along with that. And most of us wouldn't have known if we hadn't been screaming and yelling all about it. So I wouldn't be against that either. It would just solve a lot of problems.
Well, I'd rate that probably about a 6 out of 10, Macca. You started off really slow, a bit port-centric.
I like kicking them.
Yeah, but you finished strongly. So 6 out of 10, not bad at all.
Thanks, mate.
Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Because I think that's just about it.
No, that's it.
Look, we must give our thanks to our excellent sponsors, Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate. If you're buying, selling or renting, go and see Ryan and his team up at Golden Grove, Smith Partners Real Estate. Down to Earth Electrical, obviously for all your electrical needs anywhere in the Adelaide CBD. And both those organisations are linked on our website. If you need them, and also of course our patrons on Patreon. If you want to support us on Patreon, we really do appreciate any support we get. You can go to patreon.com/AFL CrowCast or go to aflcrowcast.com and click on the Patreon button. Gentlemen, it was a breath of fresh air without the donkey, and and I've got to say the lack of Nicky helped the flow as well. Sorry, Nick. No, look, thanks to everyone in the chat. Over 500 comments again on a cold Tuesday night. So
I learned a lot.
We
learned a lot.
We love the boys on Spreaker Chat. So thanks very much, guys. Thanks for everyone listening in on Facebook and YouTube. And I reckon that's about it. Don't forget, we got the Rev Up on Friday night, I should say. Myself and my troublesome son look at the big game coming up against the Power. Until then, we'll catch you later, everyone.
See you guys.
Yeah, good night all.
Bye.